Saitama vs Popeye is the finale of Season 8 of Death Battle. We're not going to review any other episodes because it's the finale. And before we talk about the episode itself, I want to talk about how I felt leading up to it. Initially, I was pretty neutral. While I do quite like Saitama as a character and deconstruction of various shonen manga tropes, I didn't really care about Popeye. I thought, hey, this could be neat, and not much more. I had scenes that I wanted, I was happy for my mates, and that's about it. But as time went on, things sort of changed. I started rewatching a lot of old Popeye shorts during the waiting period, and something happened. When I was watching these shorts, I came across a ton of old cartoons that I used to watch with my grandfather before he passed. And it was something of a surprise. I was so young when I watched these that I genuinely didn't even know they were Popeye shorts. They were just these cartoons that featured a guy who eats green stuff. And I hadn't even thought about them for years before now. Like, the cartoon I associated with my grandfather was this Chinese Monkey King VHS that I don't remember the name of. I'd forgotten all about those shorts. But rewatching them sort of made me realize how much Popeye matters to me. He's a character that I spent a lot of time with when I was with my grandfather, even if I didn't know. And by the time the episode dropped, I was pretty solidly hyped. Not only did this have so much potential to be a good episode, but it had my favourite pair of combatants in the season. I wanted to like it so much, but I didn't want my liking of the episode to come from nothing but bias for the characters. So, how was it when I watched it? I tried my best not to give away stuff I talk about in the review in my reaction, so now we'll see how I really felt after giving this episode some time to simmer in my brain. Keep in mind, I hate that I have to do this, for the purposes of this review being on YouTube, I can't show any clips of the episode. I'm just going to have to use screen captures of the episode. I'm getting sick and tired of Rooster Teeth copyright slapping my videos repeatedly, to the point of the last episode I reviewed even getting slapped off YouTube after I had made it public. You guys don't know how many times I have to re-edit, re-upload a review before I even make it public. Mother Eisen though, this time I had to fucking do it after it went public. If you have a problem with the fact that it's all going to be screen caps, take it up with Rooster Teeth headquarters and YouTube. Starting with the analysis, Saitama's is amazing. Easily one of the best this season. While not all the jokes really landed for me, I think he did a really good job of approaching Saitama in an interesting way. Going over the versus stuff, yes, but also focusing on his existential crisis and methods of enjoying life despite having lost the capacity to experience his greatest passion. I especially liked them actively going over his workout routine, that was funny. Though did I have to say Saitama has never really broken a sweat against his opponents while showing him explicitly breaking a sweat. Popeye on the other hand, now that is funny. I found a good deal of jokes in Popeye's analysis really funny and amusing, and while them going over Saitama's training regimen was funny but expected, I did not expect them to discuss the nutritional value of fucking spinach. I even like the cutaway gag in it, and the way they handled the racial stereotyping is very good, and funny as well. The animation is spectacular, there's no way around it. But it's only fair to go looking at it at the way I look at any other episode, putting it under that critical eye that people always complain about me using, because they're the strange group that thinks criticism is bad and not a source from which to improve through self-reflection on your work. You know, the kind of people who will never get anywhere in life because they never listen to people who tell them how they can improve. Those kinds of people. The start of the fight is hand-drawn and it looks really good. This feels like the same style in terms of line work, coloring, and shading as Macho Man vs Kool-Aid Man, and just makes me wish that episode had more Macho Man vs Kool-Aid Man in it. Saitama picks up a can of cigars, spinach that's sitting next to some olive oil. That's a nice touch. He says the 15 yen can is too expensive, which is funny to me because that's not even 20 Australian cents. But Popeye pulls a Segata and jumps out of the can to pick a fight. Wonderful. The initial fight's nothing special. I mean, it's a casual Saitama versus an unspinached Popeye, and Saitama isn't really paying him any mind. Popeye punches Saitama through the building, knocking over the wall is really nice, but Popeye walking out the front door despite there not being any wall attached to it, then reattaching that wall, that's the part that's actually funny. Also Wimpy's Burgers. Saitama then drops a death punch on Popeye, and while I initially thought this was really weird, seeing as Popeye's just a human and Saitama's never done this to a human, I get the fact that Saitama jumping out of a printed logo on a spinach can might have given the impression that this deformed goblin is a monster. But the fact that Popeye makes note that he can't read the kanji for death, fucking A, that's great. The music stops and Popeye splatters. I don't remember hearing the music stopping in the track when I listened to it, so I think they finally did it. I think they might have finally realized that you don't need to have a big pause in the track, you can just edit the music in the fight. A bunch of random shit falls down alongside the pieces of Popeye, and not only is this funny, it actually works in Saitama's one-punching gimmick into the fight, and contrasts to the ending of the battle, which I'll bring up when we get there. Popeye then eats his spinach and puts himself back together, which sadly doesn't sound like it's accompanied by Popeye's theme song, just some jingle that I don't recognize that sounds vaguely similar. Maybe it's just a version of his theme that I'm not familiar with, but I didn't actually hear Popeye's theme at all during this whole thing, and that That really sucks. And they didn't really sell the spinach going through Popeye's body that well, and I don't really like how the explosions in his biceps happen outside of his arms instead of inside of them as I'm used to from Popeye. We guess Saitama's okay because we kinda need it to, and I like the bit of spinach that hits him in the face too. The next bit is just funny when Saitama gets punched from the other side of the screen, leading to a quick fight better than clashing at super speed wherein they clock each other right in the balls. Saitama gets a tiny bit more serious and starts clowning on Popeye, which looks really fluid and dynamic, but does a little more than stretch Popeye out so we can punch Saitama so how the animation changes. This is where I'm glad I didn't listen to the track. Well, okay, I knew that this was going to happen because it was too obvious. It was obviously going to happen, but the track would have spoiled it completely as to when it happened, so I'm glad I didn't listen to it. Thankfully, the animation changes as a result of Popeye's punch instead of Saitama. Saitama doing it didn't really make any sense. He's never shown to be able to change animation. I mean, neither is Popeye, but he's like launched people out. He's like gone out of the animation before, so it's not really that far-fetched. Here comes a Popeye and Saitama sprite clash that I only have 3 things to say. 1. The custom sprites here are pretty good looking. I don't know if Popeye's are custom, but I'm very sure the Saitama ones are, and they're nice. 2. I wish they did more at this. All that happens is Saitama shooting some air pressure at Popeye, who's super fast rowing a boat. There's not like much actual stuff happening. And 3, I haven't brought up voice acting yet, but while it's all solid, I'm not really a fan of the delivery of "I am what I am." He just kind of sounds bored and doesn't sound like how Popeye would really say it. He does a Quagmire arm, for fuck's sake. Reality changes again to hand-drawn, and Popeye being more worried about how to get back home is funny. I like that. He would worry more about that instead of anything that's actually going on. Saitama then does a serious table flip combined with Psychosis ocean lift to lift a massive chunk of the planet up, which looks stunning. I love Popeye's reaction to it too. Then Saitama punches Popeye through it, and oh, Saitama's punch changed reality. I was hoping they wouldn't do. Ah well, how's this next bit? Animated in SFM by super special surprise guest animator, the guy who already animated Saitama for Rooster Teeth. And here's the Popeye model. Look, I get it's funny, right? But this is just, it's ugly and cursed. I'm not a fan of it. It's like, I can't get into the fight with this ugly thing. This whole clash here when they're going super fast and shit just isn't the same when you have this beautiful looking Saitama model against this thing. Now admittedly, Popeye punching Saitama and blowing a planet up has way more impact due to the sound design than last season's finale, where every planet blowing up had the impact of a wet donkey fart. So that's pretty cool. And I do quite like the following death punch from Saitama, which despite repeating a joke, manages to be funny again by having Popeye pull back into a fucking spinach punch. Oh, wow, wow, wow. That looks like the Chinese pinyin for spinach, not the Japanese kanji, but I'll let it slide. That shit is the funniest joke in this animation. I'm glad it was saved for last. But like, here's the thing. I think I would have preferred if Popeye was normal for the whole SFM bit, but then turned hyper-realistic just for this moment against a hyper-realistic Saitama. You've seen the fan art, I'm sure. That would have been funnier to me. Then there's the "I eats my spinach" line, which I don't like. Saitama's delivery of his line before that is a little wonky, but not too bad. But I just outright dislike Popeye's delivery. The previous one I didn't like just sounds a bit off, but this sounds completely off. Popeye feels more right saying it like, "I eats me spinach," instead of the super fast way he says it here, "I eats me spinach." It just isn't as funny when he says it that fast. Like, it just doesn't work for me. Then reality breaks again and we get the best scene of the animation. Saitama just standing there, taking in what's happening. The fact that he's having fun. He's enjoying himself. He's getting that fight he wants. You see that smile on his face. That hits home, man. I don't need to say anything else, do I? You can see his expression on screen. Figure it out. This is where the voice actor for Saitama really shines. Just that jubilation, that joy in his voice as he approaches the final clash. And I think he deserves full credit for it, because we've never really heard, at least to my memory, in Japanese or English, Saitama being like this. This is a vocal delivery for a character that has no precedent to base itself on, and it works. The expression work is so good, it's all so nice. And then Saitama and Popeye go for their final clash, and they punch each other so hard that Saitama has the same death as Mikasa. Well, okay, this isn't quite as funny as but it's better in every other way. Not only is the build-up genuinely beautiful, the death is just better. The death scream is not as hilarious this time, and the shattering is a lot more dynamic than that. The sound design is good, and Saitama turns into a bunch of eggs that fall around Popeye until he catches one. We get a nice little jingle from Popeye, and that concludes the fight. I said earlier there was some contrast between this and what happened earlier, but it's really just that Saitama's one punch that kills causes a splatter of blood and a rain of body parts, which is similar to what you might get out of a One Punch Man episode, while Popeye's one punch that kills causes a big goofy explosion and a rain of random things that have come from Saitama, which is similar to what you might get out of a Popeye short. And I don't have much more to say about this now I think about it, at least not beyond what I've already said. My problems are as is, and my pluses are as is. It has its fair share of problems, and I guess the biggest one would be that it absolutely felt like a Saitama episode that features Popeye, instead of an episode that I feel covers both equally in the fight. It's not a huge problem, seeing as Popeye isn't like a thematically rich character comparatively, and Saitama really needed those moments, but I can't help but notice that Saitama gets several shots dedicated to portraying him in an extremely dynamic and cool way, but Popeye doesn't really get anything. There is nothing Popeye does in this animation that sticks with me at all. His one standout moment that does stick with me, that contradicts what shut up, is this less impactful version of what Saitama just did, and that kinda sucks. It's not like a huge problem or anything, I understand why it's like this, but it's there and it's bothersome that it really feels like Popeye was the lesser of the characters here. The episode does have some issues that I think more technically superior episodes avoid. Snake vs. Sam tells a more compelling story, but I'll get into that another time. Afro vs. Jack is far more tighter, with every single shot being paced perfectly to become what could genuinely be the most technically perfect episode Death Battle have ever done. And Yoda vs. Mickey gives both characters equal moments of shine as characters beyond just the fighting stuff. But then, I think that while all those episodes do a lot of things better, I'm not entirely sure I could say I prefer them to Saitama vs. Popeye. But to even be mentioned amongst those episodes is a feat. Those are the episodes that I feel bleed the most heart, soul, and passion into the work produced. These are the episodes that make me want to keep watching Death Battle. Not the average 7 out of 10 good enough products, but the ones that push themselves to be the best they can be, that really try to break the limits of what they can accomplish. And I think that's pretty fitting for a matchup with a character like Saitama, isn't it? It broke the limits of what it could do, though maybe less seeing this as well as finale, and put out a phenomenal episode. What more could I ask for? Big fat 10 out of 10. My favorite episode of the season. And it doesn't often happen where my favorite episode of the season is the finale, but hey, this episode did it for me. It did a lot. Due to not having any of the major downfalls of other finales, like Darkseid vs. Thanos' terrible progression and complete waste of potential, Hulk vs. Broly's insultingly bad sound design that would fail to even get an F if handed in as a college assignment, or Deadpool vs. Pinkie Pie's everything, and hitting the same highs as the phenomenal finales, this now is finally given Goku vs. Superman competition. That monopoly for best finale is broken. And the fact that this episode has multiple animation styles, it gives it that special something to signify to someone with no idea that it's the finale. This is what I've wanted more in finales. Even great episodes like All Might vs. Might Guy and Pokemon vs. Digimon, what about them actually signifies that they're finales to the uninformed? Nothing really. They're great, but they don't have a special something. None of the other finales do, except maybe Devil vs. Pinkie Pie, but that episode sucks, so. Goku vs. Superman and Saitama vs. Popeye though, they don't have that problem. They do something to really signify that this is the finale, to let you know that this is something special and not just a really good episode in a season of Death Battle. And hey, this finally takes away Samurai Jack vs. Afro Samurai's monopoly on hand-drawn animations. While I still think Jack vs. Afro blows it out of the water on a technical level, featuring some of the best framing, shot composition, and timing that I've ever seen in a Versus series, it's not like that's the only thing that matters. Personally, I prefer Saitama vs. Popeye in spite of the fact that I recognize Jack vs. Afro as better in a lot of ways. This episode clicks with me, it gives me what I wanted. Saitama vs. Popeye is phenomenal, one of my favorite episodes of the series, and we'll just have to hope anything in Season 9 can come close to that. But at this point, don't waste our time with Galactus vs. Unicron. You've dangled that carrot over me for 9 odd fucking years now, and I get that if you don't want to do the fucking episode, don't do it. Don't do it out of obligation, for fuck's sake. I don't want Galactus vs. Unicron anymore. This is what Season 8's done for me. Horrible season! Also, yeah, you can go check out Biffweed's review, linked in the description. It will probably be better than the actual episode, because he might bring up Popeye punching Bluto into a sausage. You know you could do that? It's gonna age terribly if Biff is too dumb to bring that up. Have a good one, fellas.